I can start probably, Musaddiq, why don't you go ahead and do a brief intro, and then I will take back and introduce myself and our speaker. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Musaddiq Khan. I've been involved in the pharmaceutical industry for about 16, 17 years now, focused primarily on drug development projects in the early phase, so phase 1 to some phase 3 projects. I've had stints at AstraZeneca, Roche, and Eli Lilly, but in May last year, I joined an organization called Medible that are focused on decentralized clinical trials and provide a technology platform for that to happen. So I'm a vice president there in their DCT solutions group. So my role is really understanding how to translate clinical operational protocols into a decentralized solution and identify what the efficiencies are there. So I'm currently based in Abu Dhabi in the UAE, and yeah, very excited to hear about the discussion today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musaddiq Khan. So about myself, I think most of you guys already know, I'm purely pharmaceutical development guy from discovery through commercialization. Have done a couple of adventures and have 4 products in the market. I'm not going to take much of time. I'm based in California, San Francisco, and I'm going to move over to Dr. Junaid Kalia, who is neurologist by profession, by entrepreneur. I always feel comfortable saying that, actually, entrepreneur by heart. The one thing which came to my mind whenever I looked or heard Dr. Junaid Kalia is that our future generation has taken their future in their own hands. They're not depending upon the governments. They really want to design their own goals and then work hard to accomplish those. So I will pass on to Dr. Junaid Kalia. Please give us a brief intro about yourself, and then you can dive into your presentation. Thank you.
Hi, this is Junaid Kalia, neurocritical care, stroke, and epilepsy specialist. I am basically Vice President of Clinical Strategy at V1 Health, a large telemedicine company, and deeply entrenched into the digital health ecosystem in different areas. One of the 2 things that I'm trying to do is basically enable some of these digital health technologies to come to Pakistan. And I'm very grateful for APPNA to actually make this a reality. And this education innovation series is one of the ways that I have personally benefited in terms of education and learning and meeting and networking as well. And then secondly, one of the few projects that we are trying to do is basically making sure that open access, open source information about digital technologies are available. This field is extremely fast changing. So some of the stuff that you talk about is basically obsolete in the next 3 months. So the structure of the talk today would be that I'm going to just go brief introductions of basic concepts that you're going to need to actually understand how we're moving towards it. Then I'm going to come to the main topic, and then God willing, we're going to go ahead and basically, design a clinical trial quickly while we are doing this. So the main game over here is that we are going through a digital transformation of healthcare. By the way, these are all chapters that are published in Neurology Pocketbook, open access available. The reason I did it this way is because then you will have a complete accessibility, copy paste this, use it in your own presentations, etc. A few chapters that I've written personally, but a few of them have been written by amazing students from multiple cities and medical schools in Pakistan. So let's define digital health. It's basically technology and health in an intersection. And there are multiple, statistics, artificial intelligence, everything is involved in a conundrum while we're talking about digital health is concerned. So it is basically truly an area where intersection of different technologies, talents, professions come in together. The key issue when we are talking about digitalization is, of course, digitalization, but the most important thing to understand is that it is deceptive. I'm not going to go about everything because I'm just going to, there's available for you guys to actually review this. It is basically the Kodak moment. So the minute, do you really remember Kodak as a company? Nobody does, right? I mean, we have completely moved to digital photography. Same thing, who remembers box office, right? Nobody does that. It's basically Netflix. So the clear digital transformation is so deceptive and it's so powerfully overwhelming that the areas that were previously considered standard are completely gone. They're literally moved on. So it is extremely disruptive and extremely deceptive in terms of its impact. Now, two things that people need to understand what digital transformation really means. So digital transformation basically means is that it actually happens in 3 stages: digitization, digitalization, and then digital transformation. Think of it as a map example, right? If you have basically a map that you have pages and you have literally go through that, the minute you turn that into a PDF, that's just digitization. You have to still do pages on the PDF. But the minute you actually add a little bit of functionality, what that means is that you have point-to-point direction, but you still have nothing else. And that will be digitalization. This is where, to be honest with you, in healthcare we are. What we are moving towards is complete digital transformation. And an example for mapping technology would be, Google Maps, which has enabled DoorDash, Careem, Uber, all those Lyft, etc. The idea is that you have new user experiences, new transformations. In short, the same data that we had for generations, for hundreds of years, we have been using maps, but we were not able to create new experiences, new pathways, new workflows. That's what happens when you have digital transformation. That's concept number 1. Again, we are stuck at the digitalization state and we are moving towards digital transformation. The second thing is that it is all about convergence. Convergence, convergence, convergence. We are looking at multiple technologies that are coming in together. It may be 5G, cloud computing, mobile health, health IoTs, etc., virtual health technologies. So it is never one person's job. As a physician, we need to understand that this is all about convergence, and we need to start working as in a team fashion. But to be honest with you, most of the time, physicians are not the best at working in terms of team. It is improving significantly in funding. If you look at the year-over-year funding, it is amazing that we are seeing that digital health is getting amazing amount of funding as well. And then everything is going to generate data, period. And if you are going to generate data, you need artificial intelligence. It's not optional, period. This is something you will need because everything that you're going to do is going to generate data, and that data needs to be turned into knowledge, and then finally actionable knowledge, which is also called wisdom. So that's where we need artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is going to develop in as-service model. So there will be different stacks of modules they're going to develop. One will be for oncology, one will be for computer vision in terms of pathology and in terms of radiology, one will be natural language processing, one would be just for education, one would be for back-end processing, one would be for billing. All these things are going to develop in different stacks, and that's how we develop software right now. If you are at all interested in seeing that how tech software works, they actually developed software as a service model, and that's exactly we're going to follow in artificial intelligence. And as soon as these mature, you're going to see more and more wisdom coming through, because then it will again not only converge at the level of technologies, it will converge at the level of artificial intelligence, and then you will see true benefit. We are far from it. This is still a vision, but I'm going to make sure that you do understand that why we are not getting there, because we are stuck at individual stacks at the moment. Intracerebral hemorrhage detection on CAT scan, perfect model. The other model is large vessel occlusion, but nobody talks about NLP in it, right? Why don't we see risk factors evaluated right away with the patient? We don't have that yet. That is separate tree that we have developed. Now we have to converge that. So that's where the real benefit is going to come, and it's coming. And I said it's disruptive. Believe it or not, one company is going to come back and move around as well. And more importantly, there has been significant support from World Health Organization, FDA, and National Health Services from UK that is actually trying to push digital health because of rising cost of healthcare. And there's a significant benefit because constantly there's a decrease of cost in computation and storage, and bandwidth. Those are the three main things that the cost is concerned. And then of course, the data availability is increasing by the day. We are getting more and more disease data, and more importantly, health data. What is the difference between disease data, which is radiomics, clinicomics, microbiomics, but health data is EKG machines, ALT, altimetry, voice data to see if the stroke patient has a dysarthria. All these things are getting more and more available for you to run different analyses, even sentiment analyses, let's say in depression, and you are able to get that. So we have still a lot of challenges that are going to go through, and we also have a lot of regulatory hurdles that we are going to go through. The second big thing that is happening independently of digital health is as a columns. Now we have a broader aspect of digital health. Now let's go into mobile health. Mobile health is basically using mobile technology for healthcare. And if you're going to see, there's a significant amount of medical apps that are already, and they're increasing at a massive rate. I mean, from 2015 to 2021, there's basically doubling of medical health apps. And if you look at Apple, Tim Cook said that the most important contribution of Apple to humanity will be healthcare. They have significant amount of resources being dedicated in it. And there are significant benefits of mobile health application, especially now when literally every person, even in Pakistan, no matter what their income level is, what their class is, they are able to at least afford mobile devices. And therefore, those people who are out of reach in terms of accessibility for digital clinical trials, digital health interventions, even digital therapeutics, they are able to do that because the barrier to entry, the one time that you have to enter, is very, very low. This is, a lot of information about what to do, security practices, etc. What is the mHealth task force like, etc. And then it goes into all the examples of what in neurology specifically, because okay, I mean, clearly neurology is the best, right? So we're going to go ahead and, have neurovascular epilepsy. So you can try these applications and maybe come up with your ideas. And that's why we bring this information in Neurology Pocketbook for everyone. So let's say you have a dermatology app you want to design and you want to go back and see what other applications have been designed. So mobile health is one of the cornerstones, which by definition also includes virtual care, right? I mean, Zoom call is right now on desktop, and most people are, some of you probably are attending the Zoom meeting over the phone itself. And this is the key issue where, again, APPNA comes in very, very important, because they have really tried towards digital education and transformation of education itself. I mean, we are looking at, passive learning to active learning. We're looking at restricted access to open access, and we are looking at offline to online, like we're doing right now. And these new trends, we need to make sure that we are educating our new people. And as I said, APPNA, including, many fellowships in movement disorder has been there. There's many fellowship in stroke, has really moved the needle forward for virtual education in medicine. So again, not only we have to teach medicine in a virtual way, we have to also teach virtual knowledge in medicine. So it should go both ways in terms of education is concerned. So now let's get back to the main topic. So digital health, mHealth, and of course, education in the mHealth. And now we are coming to virtual clinical trials. So virtual clinical trials is, what is it? So one of the key essence of virtual clinical trial is that it's digital, right? I mean, the whole process from end to end, again, remember that digital transformation? We're not talking about digitalization. We're not talking about digitization. We're talking about digital transformation of end-to-end processes that brings new experiences. That is the key issue. And that's where we're moving towards virtual clinical trials. It is digital first. There's virtual capability built in. We have plethora of new devices in healthcare, Internet of Things. We have added e-consent. These are all decentralized. So there are many terms that people use. Some people use DCTs, which is decentralized clinical trials, virtual clinical trials, and then the key issue over here. The most important thing about these virtual clinical trials is it can be direct to consumer. And I'll come to that in an example. So all of this combined creates this sort of virtual clinical trial system in which we are doing. Why is it necessary? It is impossible to conduct a clinical trial, especially in low-income countries like Pakistan. There's, first of all, in the United States, there are major issues. So let's discuss them. Increasing cost. I mean, it literally costs millions of dollars. If you're going to phase 4, it's up to $35 million to actually conduct a phase 4 study. And all of them, if you combine together, that's more than $100 million to actually conduct a clinical trial. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Prolonged time to completion. I mean, the time to completion with these is average is 7.5 years. So if I'm going to, look at it, I mean, in 7.5 years, I mean, Tesla is going to basically be double the price. So I'm never going to put money into it. You know, you understand what I'm trying to say? Digitalization is the key and the important moment of the time. And then they do not, so completion is a big issue, but more importantly, accessibility and recruitment is also an issue. The average recruitment rate is 0.5% per month. It's ridiculous. I mean, there are clinical sites who do not recruit one participant for months. And that's when we realized, especially in COVID, like literally, you know, all this money that was poured in seemed like it was going down the drain, because, you know, there was zero enrollment for a year and a half, 18 months or so. So what we are seeing is that we have to break through this problem of cost, time, accessibility, and recruitment. And the most important thing in modern clinical trials, especially when you are designing digital therapeutics and digital biomarkers, which is the next topic, is diversity. We have seen that majority of the clinical trials include what? White, American, and also male, by the way, not even females, for God's sakes. So they are 82% of people that are already represented. African Americans are still representative and Hispanics are, but there's literally no clinical trials being done in industrialized countries who take Asians and Asians very seriously. And we know this because there are seizure medications that clearly have significant side effect because of the genetic profile of South Asian and, more importantly, East Asian region. So therefore, we need trials now in this day and age that are diverse in their approach. And then, of course, I mean, it's site-based, right? Literally, you are confined to a site, which is in direct contrast, which is traditional clinical trials, to virtual clinical trials. Virtual clinical trials are basically decentralized, global in nature. They are direct to consumer. They're not direct to site. They are direct to consumer. So if I wanted to, quote unquote, get into a study, which I did, which was Apple and atrial fibrillation. I was part of that Stanford study from Apple Watch. Did they go and look at sites? Did they go ahead and said, okay, University of Texas Southwestern is going to be one site, this is going to be another site? No, it's just an app. Go and click, yes, I want to be part of a research trial. And darn it, you are a part of the research trial and they are able to recruit you. What does it bring? Sitelessness. It brings, time is less, cost is less. You are direct to consumer and you are moving forward. So this has a massive impact. And especially the reason that I did this, doing this talk, is because that it has massive, massive implications on bringing both funding of virtual clinical trials and validation of new devices, digital therapeutics, and even new pharmaceuticals, because that is, again, in my opinion, need of the day as far as that is concerned. Let me give you another example so that we understand before we move forward from virtual clinical trials to digital biomarkers. Look, let's say if I have a seizure medication, what is my endpoint here? My endpoint is very simple. Decrease of seizure frequency by 50%. That is my endpoint. How am I actually measuring it? The measurement of that endpoint is basically done what? The person comes to the site, we actually check the patient, we actually look at the history, and then the nurse actually talks to the patient and then puts it into the database. And then we actually, see and then compare the randomized clinical trial. Why can't you do it on a mobile application that a person just opens up and puts it in? That, hey, I had a seizure, and literally you have a seizure to seizure level accountability and transparency. And as a matter of fact, real-time data analytics can be done in terms of data safety boards as well. So it is just mind-blowing the way you can actually produce benefit when you are using virtual clinical trials. So again, don't think that is all about digital wearables or therapeutics in terms of virtual reality or anything. It has direct implications to pharmaceutical companies. And then, we have our resident panelist over here. He's going to tell you when he was at Eli Lilly. I don't know if you know this, Eli Lilly has been significantly pouring money in its digital clinical trial platform as well. So we are actually looking at a lot of pharmaceutical companies that are going into it. Just another last thing, Slope.io just received $20 million in funding for their digital clinical trial platform that includes basically logistics of materials as well. So that's one thing that you see, that people are not rewarding it in terms of just may be, able to see, they're also rewarding them with money so that people do develop these platforms. Now, again, these are virtual trials that are decentralized. This is what I talk about. And then lastly, this is the conundrum that we're going to talk about. We are developing, or we are getting information in a massive, massive way now. We are getting so much information. We are data generating machines, for God's sakes. I mean, right now it just literally popped me that my heart rate is a little high. So, clearly we are getting so much data, and we need these data can actually significantly change. And when I'm going to go and actually look at the example, when you're going to see that the data is going to be very, very important in making this. The other benefit is actually truly beautification of the total patient journey. Getting the consent is much easier. You have a video, the person says video, you get them a questionnaire to answer that they understand it's truly an informed consent. If you've seen any informed consent, clearly, they don't really know shit, right? But with the digital technology, we can actually have true informed consent. We can have truly decentralized trials. I don't have to talk to Germany. We can put this whole virtual clinical trial anywhere in the world, faster, better, easier. One of the biggest study was Apple Watch and AFib. Believe it or not, it had 400,000 people. Can you believe that? If you have another clinical trial, to have 400,000 people in a clinical trial, it's astounding. You cannot achieve that. And of course, there's another trial going on with mSTOP study, which is again, Johnson & Johnson, a large pharmaceutical company, looking into it, which is mainly about prevention of stroke. Again, this book chapter is going to be about stroke and neurology, so don't mind. But anyways, there are other clinical trials that are going on. And there's a shakeable trials that is going on with Apple Watch, that can detect tremors and shakes as far as that is concerned. And FDA has put out guidelines after guidelines in the past 3 months, literally in the past 3 months, to actually make this into a reality. However, there are, of course, major issues with it. One of the major issues is digital literacy. Some of the older folks need some time to actually, understand these. There's other limitations of that. Sometimes phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials are not appropriate to be done in terms of digital clinical trials. And then once you have phase 1 and phase 2 done, when you have safety monitoring done, you can do phase 3 and phase 4 at a much cheaper rate. Again, other epileptic seizures via Apple Watch is also ongoing. And then, of course, cognitive impairment assessment. There's another new company called Altido, who's using artificial intelligence in cognitive assessment to actually mark out that clear cognitive decline, which can enhance our early detection. And the minute we have early detection, we can actually have therapies that can attack. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when I actually get into digital biomarkers. So what are digital biomarkers? So first of all, to understand that digital biomarkers are basically physiological measurements for biological and pathological processes. And then these interventions can be both diagnostic or therapeutic. This is part of the whole digital sort of health continuum as well. Now, before I move into, you need to understand the difference between a digital biomarker and a clinical outcome assessment. These are both data points. These can be both endpoints. Digital biomarkers are physiological, objective endpoints: heart rate variability, pulse ox variability, activity level, EKG findings. These are objective findings that can be digitized and therefore are called digital biomarkers. However, in neurology and psychiatry, clinical outcome assessments are extremely important as well. Depression trials, if you see that, like, what is it? It is literally a subjective assessment of the patient saying that, okay, I got this ketamine and therefore I feel like, my depression is better. Do we have a serum test, a blood test to confirm that? We don't. So what we are trying to do over here is that we also have clinical outcome assessments, which are subjective, and digital biomarkers, which are objective. And both of them are important. In digital biomarkers, we are looking at different kinds. One of the key ones are diagnostic, as I just said, our atrial fibrillation detection. We can have monitoring in terms of, accelerometer-based sensors that can collect chest and limb movement. We already have that. pharmacodynamic response of biomarkers. So for example, I have a clinic wrist-worn study that has tremors. I can see that early morning if the Parkinson's is really stiffened up and is not having enough activity, then I can see that the bradykinesia is worsened on this new medication, and therefore it is not the right choice for the patient. And of course, clinical assessments also have different areas. One of the key ones is basically patient-reported outcome, performance outcomes, clinician-reported outcomes. So when I actually see the patient, it doesn't matter what the patient thinks as far as depression is concerned. I think that the patient is, still not doing better. So we have to, when you have subjective sort of inputs, you have to actually have more than one input to sort of correlate if there is truly a difference going on. And then these biomarkers can be applied in multitude of situations. Of course, direct clinical care, as we discussed. I'm not going to get into the detail, clinical research and public health. Of course, development of these biomarkers have its own, importance in terms of, how to develop them. Of course, you need to have a meaningful aspect of health, concept of interest, etc. So these endpoints, by the way, which are trademarked, are in itself sold at a very high price, especially if you look at mini mental status exam. I'm assuming everyone has used mini mental status exam. That is actually trademarked. As a matter of fact, VA was using it without paying any money. So VA had to pay $5 million of fine to the creator of mini mental status exam to actually, use that. And therefore they stopped using it, and then they had to use MOCA for some time, and then they come up with an agreement, and we still use a mini mental status in VA. So just developing these endpoints, clinically validating these endpoints is by itself a big business. So by the way, don't underestimate this in itself. So here's what I'm going to do. I think I'm really excited to, Mr. Khan's actually input on this as well. So let's design a study. So, and I think, let's just see, this is my hypothesis, increased activity decreases neurocognitive decline rate. This is my hypothesis, and I'm going to use wearables to track it. Okay. I mean, there are two studies. We're going to just talk about this for now. What we want to do is we want to do a proof of concept study. We need 100 participants because, it's just proof of concept. We're going to use clinically validated cognitive skills, which is basically either you can use International Cognitive Ability Resource. We're not going to use mental stat exam because we have to pay for it, right? Why do that? And then, we can also use well-being scores and depression scores, etc., because we wanted to make sure. I mean, the first thing is, well, Junaid, the devices are expensive. Who's going to pay for $400 worth of Apple Watches? That's where, people forget, because of the first thing when we was talking about digital health. This is not just it is creating demonetization. The degrees of money requirements for these trials are also very, very low. Just to give you an example, if I want to get this, this is actually, first of all, it is medical grade. It is a HealthPress smart bracelet. It comes with an SDK. Do you know what an SDK is? It's a software development kit. So not only do I get the device, I actually get the whole software development kit. Also, I get the APIs, which is application programming interface that directly connects with HealthKit, ResearchKit, Google Fit, etc. And by the way, if I have to order 99 pieces, it's $30. But if I'm going to order 1,000 pieces, this is $19. $19. Are you kidding me? I mean, what I'm trying to say is that if, for example, let's say, methodology and everything, I mean, I can write it better, but I don't know, we'll hire someone to fix my grammar because I'm not good at English grammar, right? Research coordinator, $6,000, I mean, $500 a month in Pakistan, who's going to basically call, make sure that they're reporting on their mobile phones, making sure that they're using the watch, they're charging it. If there are 2-3 days they have missed it, they can call and confirm. What is the cost of Pakistan? I mean, I think if you want to do the study, even for a full 12 months, it's $500 a month, maybe 1,000. But at the end of the day, I think if you really want to do it, research coordinators are relatively cheaper in Pakistan. Cost of device, if you're going to do 100 patients, is $30, right? So it's $3,000. Miscellaneous cost, you can write it down, let's say $1,000 if I'm missing something. And then development costs, development of the mobile app, development of the SDKs, development of this. Generally in Pakistan is around $5,000 if you know who to talk to. But let's say I'm wrong about this and 15,000 is my estimate of the cost. I'm completely, wrong. But let's say it's $30,000. Do you really believe that doing just this proof of concept study for $30,000? And by the way, this can be, have multiple other, implications, right? I mean, you can add depression with neurocognition. You can add different endpoints. You want to, trademark heart rate variability as a neurocognitive decline assessment. You can do that. You can clearly trademark an artificial intelligence model and sell it too. You see, the possibilities are endless, and the amount of money it takes to get there is amazingly low now. And especially, this is why I wanted to do this, was that Pakistan really needs to take this seriously, because this is an opportunity that you can't miss, because we have plethora of medical students that are dying to get into the field of medical research. We have amazing talent in terms of software development, and it's amazingly cheap. You will not believe, I mean, as far as global market is concerned, I mean global. I talk to people from Ukraine, which is a very good hub of artificial intelligence, India and Colombia, etc. I see rates and situations from globally. Over here, I'm paying a PhD $300,000 that I really have to sometimes pull my hair out. And a person in Pakistan is so fast, so good. And I can't believe that I'm only paying him $10,000. I'm serious. I mean, these are things that are, I can't show them because these are under my intellectual properties, but at the end of the day, it has massive, massive implications for it. So that's what I wanted to get at. Just going through the whole process fast, and then, of course, leaving some time to learn from Dr. Hayat and Dr. Khan here, and Dr. Uzair for me. Again, remember this is a constantly changing environment, and what's few things that I'm going to say is going to be corrected. So it is massively important that you have an open mind towards learning at all times. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to pass it down to Dr. Hayat.
Thank you very much, Junaid. It was really making presentation. We do have a time. Do you want to go back and emphasize on any of your slides if you want? Because I know you went with the bullet train speed.
No, yeah, that's what I do actually. People get bored now. That's another thing. But I'm definitely, one of the things that I really wanted was actually, to be honest with you, was looking forward with Dr. Mushadik Khan's input on this presentation and his actually input, rather than me taking up all the time. I thought it would be best we have a little bit of discussion as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Mushadik, back to you. If you want to elaborate on some of the slides he mentioned and how it can be applicable, that would be awesome. I have not seen any questions so far, but please, if you have a question, put in the chat box and we will address it as it comes. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, Junaid, thank you for that comprehensive review. And I'm hoping you're able to share the link, right? You said we can all have a look at that neurology pocketbook, because there were some gems in there, and I think you've covered most of the salient points. One of the things I think just to highlight, and again, my lens is from a drug development perspective and R&D, is this is still novel tech, right? And people generally are very resistant to change, as we all know. One of the things that's happened over the past 18, 24 months is, ironically, with lockdown and with COVID, is that it's catalyzed people's I suppose perceptions and risk appetite. So again, from a drug development perspective, and I was at Lilly as lockdown started, and pharma has been notoriously conservative, risk averse, understandably so. And trying to merge it with a kind of demo or die tech iterative culture has been a challenge, right? And it's been happening for a while. Now, what happened with with COVID was suddenly all these approaches that previously would have been a nice to have and were new things to try suddenly became the only option, right? So having remote visits, having remote monitoring, televisits for consultations, using remote sensors or wearables to try and keep trials ticking along, making the amendments. So suddenly people had to start trying these things, and some of those things stuck, right? So the kind of the pendulum for innovation swung one way. And now I think we're seeing with a lot of other things as well, you know, whether it's working from home or whether it's flexibility in working hours, you know, it's how far that pendulum is going to swing back to where it was pre-COVID. And I think it's a similar approach here with having this novel approach to conducting clinical trials. So certainly one of the big things from my perspective, the big challenge is really around kind of change management, because we need to approach this new paradigm very much like a change management process, right? So you need to get a few kind of influencers who are, say, within the pharma company, get them on the bus and, you know, use them to build the momentum and all of those other things. So I think there's, you know, that things are moving in the right direction, but there's still a lot of education that needs to happen. And a big part of that is, I think as Dr. Junaid mentioned, is about the language that we're using and how we're making sure that we're all talking about the same thing. When, you know, when we talk about a virtual clinical trial, when we talk about a decentralized trial, and what that means, and also that it's not a binary choice, right? So when we talk about a decentralized approach to a clinical trial, you know, an oncology study, you're not going to be able to do the CT scan in someone's living room, right? But what you can do is allow a nurse to come to their house, or allow them to go to a local CVS or something to get some of their bloods taken, rather than have to go to the hospital, you know, to the MSK site, or you know, a large site that may take them hours to get to. So, you know, you have this hybrid approach, and certainly that's what we're finding again at Medable, that most of these trials are following a hybrid approach rather than a fully decentralized. And then the last piece I think that's interesting, and I'd like to hear more about actually from the perspective of Pakistan, because I only have a superficial understanding of how things are, but I'm very keen to understand how we can kind of leverage some of this technology. As Dr. Junaid was saying, it's the perfect place to be rolling these sorts of things out, right? If you get the momentum going. We've got patient populations, we've got digital literacy, we've got the mobile connectivity, and then we've got the desire from the physicians, right? That want to be doing this research, and a part of that. One of the things that I'm curious about, and has been a challenge in Europe, less so in the US, it's still happening, but you know, as Dr. Junaid said, the FDA released specific guidance in the past 3 months about embracing novel technology and how to use DCT approaches and digital technologies in drug development. How I think if you can start guiding the regulatory approach to be more pragmatic and to be accepting of novel approaches, suddenly that becomes an environment where other people want to come to, right? So we're seeing that in Europe, for example, the Danish medical, the regulatory agency, have also just specifically provided guidance on how to use DCTs. Suddenly, Denmark becomes a more attractive option than France or Germany for a pharma company to go to, right? Because they know that they can start using these more efficient methods. So I think that's one approach to understand. And then the other piece is also just around the kind of the profile of the people that are going to be involved. So, you know, a big piece, you know, we talked about the diversity earlier, but the big piece is around how you educate people that this is okay to do, right? And that actually you still keep that patient centricity. So you keep them at the center of how you design the study and how they participate. You know, the big advantage of being able to use sensors or wearables is that it's passive data collection. So the impact to an individual is relatively low, yet they still provide this data, right? So understanding, even in the US and the UK, some people, they like going to the doctor because they feel that they're going to be looked after, right? And so if you say to them, oh, I'll just do a video call once every 2 weeks, suddenly that doesn't feel the same for them, right? Some people don't like having nurses coming to their house or medical equipment coming to the house because the neighbors say something, right? So it's about understanding how people are going to embrace this. And part of that, I think, is actually just continuing, and as Dr. Janid said, so many people already have a wearable or an activity tracker to monitor or to improve their lifestyle. I think if you try and make that as seamless as possible, that they just continue doing a similar thing, that then suddenly becomes much easier and less of a hurdle for them to participate. So I think there's lots of aspects to consider. I think, as just to kind of reiterate what Dr. Junaid said, is there's a really significant opportunity here, and I think the timing of it is right. So it's absolutely appropriate to be kind of leading the pack on that.
Oh, I mean, that was amazing summary. I just want to clarify or maybe challenge a few things, because that's what I love to do. So I never thought in my life that I will be doing digital banking. I mean, the one thing that is as close to health is money, right? I mean, people will die for it. Money or health, right? What I'm saying is that I never thought in my life that I'm going to be doing digital banking. As a matter of fact, up till 5 years ago, there was no such thing as a digital-only bank. If you look at it, I mean, the history of it, we always had, brick and mortar banks. The reason that I believe that the healthcare moves a little slow, and especially in United States, UK, it is the reimbursement environment. Because the reimbursement has to come from government entities, it has to come from insurance companies, and there's a hierarchy and bureaucracy that is actually laid on, which actually stifles innovation a lot, which again brings Pakistan and even maybe UAE at a fantastic place where this another D of digital health, which is democratization, comes in. Because when you have that less of reimbursement burden, where you can actually clearly create a product, and that will be better, people will adopt it. I mean, exactly, Amazon is great because of 2-day shipping, right? I mean, now everyone has to do 2-day shipping, otherwise that's it, you're done. If I did 2-day shipping in medicine, it's not like CMS is going to give me $100 extra. It's not possible. So that's again why I feel like amazingly Pakistan is actually at the core of creating some of these digital health technologies, and the biggest factor was cost that is actually done. I thank you so much for pointing out that Denmark is definitely also did that, and you're right. As a matter of fact, Germany has actually a term called apps on prescription. So DIGME. For those who don't know, by the way, so for APPNA people, there are codes from CMS, which you are actually doing monitoring, and you get reimbursed. So if you are a physician, please do make sure that you have a pathway to get reimbursed for that. Now there's a pathway from CMS to get reimbursed on patient-reported outcomes. It's actually $20 per month. So if you can activate that somehow into your clinical practice, that's another good revenue source in America. Same thing in Germany. Germany actually has a very low reimbursement, but they have actually started with under DIGME, that's their German term, which translates into English as apps on prescription, literally patient-reported outcomes. If you do that in your clinical practice, right? No clinical trial, no nothing, you as a physician will get reimbursed for it. I agree with the hybrid approach, and I understand that you're saying that most of them do hybrid approaches. The question really is that if you see, especially India has basically done that, labs on wheels and RAD on wheels. So we are actually seeing that a lot in terms of labs on wheels. I agree that there is a perception issue. There's also pop up, clinics that can, pop up. Like Nazmabad, there's one pop up and anyone can come and get their radiology done and labs done for one day, the next time it goes. So we're seeing siteless approaches still. I mean, you may call it hybrid, but still it's quite decentralized still. I mean, you need physical touch points. I mean, you can't take care of patients without physical touch points. But again, that whole care paradigm, when I talk about digital transformation, is basically this whole unique new experience is still changing. And thank you for pointing out that, yes, Pakistani physicians have been at forefront in desire for creating these trials as well.
Because it's really in the direct interest of the doctors as well as in the interest of the patients. I mean, there is no insurance involved. I think potential is high. I have a gentleman, a question for both of you, and I will start. I know biomarkers took a time for FDA to be convinced that they will give you the approval based on the biomarkers. And then they developed even validated biomarkers, means they have been proven, they have like a direct and validated link to the disease. And now you don't need to have those subjective evaluation, you just measure those biomarkers and make the decision. So that has been, but now you are asking Dr. Kalia to take it to the next level, which is the digitalization. So one thought come to my mind was, okay, we know there is an approved drug and we always do the comparator study. I will do, I mean, of course, we are testing here new technology, we need to think differently. I mean, if you try to fit the digitalization in the old conventional fashion, it's not going to work. Like the driverless car with the lights, green and red lights, it's not going to work. You need to have the sensors. Okay, that's what will allow to driverless cars to move without having the accident. And the problem is, and this has been always the case, we try to fit the new technology in the old conventional fashion, and it doesn't work. So my thought was just, okay, we need to be a little open-minded. I have a comparative study, okay, which I know a drug works, okay, and I now implement all the digital devices and all that stuff. And then I have my drug, okay. So in one way, by doing reverse engineering, I have validated the use for the proof of concept because that drug is proven to work. And now I use the same technology for the new drug, okay? And that's how the comparator studies are done, right? Those are the blind studies. I mean, of course, I'm proposing the open label study. So there are the opportunity, A, to prove it works. That's always the argument. You can have a regulatory body to convince, yes, we have shown it works with the old drugs, and the indication or data we are collecting there is a valid, and now we can use to make the decision for the new drug. So I think that's a one way to validate. I mean, that's how it's going to start. I will say also, I mean, I remember the generation before me, if you guys all remember how they used to determine the endpoint for wet granulation, they will hold the granules in the hand and then they will open it. So if the granules will fall apart, they will say it's an endpoint. If they stick, you have it over-wetted, okay? And if they are not really making the granules, you will say, but no more. Nobody puts their hands nowadays in the blenders or anything like that. So we have so many new technologies. So one thing I totally agree, and it's very unfortunate, it's such a sensitive industry, but have been lacking technologies big time. I used to say, even the polyethylene bag industry, like when we make the polyethylene bags, you guys all go and do the shopping, there is no hole in it. You can put the water, and in Pakistan, people buy the milk in those, okay? And the thin layer, I mean, it's such a thin, I mean, can you imagine what kind of technology they are using? Unfortunately, pharma industry has been way behind in terms of adopting the technology. I understand one is the regulatory, and then of course the education of the people. So I do have a question here. Somebody was asking, like, okay, how we can get in touch with your organization. Please send the email or share the email. We will get back to you on that one. The other was rather comment. I mean, and I can, I'm not cynical or I'm not criticizing. These comments are coming from the old people. New people are not thinking the same way we are thinking. Okay, oh, I need to get out of my house, go and see the doctor, I feel comfortable. Yeah, 87 guy surely feels that way. The new guy, no, he wants everything on his lap. So things gonna change for sure. So that was the one of the comment, like it really gives the opportunity to change the environment, and that's very true. But that should not stop the new technology, because the benefit of the new technologies outweighs those comforts and good feeling, right? So as Dr. Junaid mentioned, conducting a trial, my goodness, it's a where company really sweats and suffers. The recruitment is very low, it's costing so much, and all you need to do is hit the, finish it, move to the next point. So there are the very valid points, Dr. Junaid, you brought, and I'm very happy to say that this is the kind of presentation we need. We are not going to grasp the idea today, that's for sure, or probably not us, but the new generation will certainly grasp that idea. So those are my comments.
So a couple of things I want to add to. So my daughter does telekarate on a computer, on a TV screen, FYI. Now I actually had to build a camera on the TV screen because all the classes she can see it better. So I would never have thought that, and she enjoys it. There's once a week. She actually does her dance classes online now because, again, of course, Quran classes are online, also in person. The second I want to do is that one of the beautiful things that you brought up, is there any drug on the market that is FDA approved on a subjective endpoint? That is, if I'm going to give a medication or a patient and the endpoint is not left ventricular ejection improvement, is not that improvement of asthma, shortness of breath, NIFs are getting better, vital capacity. These are all objective markers. Is there any drug on the FDA that actually has been using a subjective endpoint, that is the feeling of patient doing better on heart failure? First time in history, in the last 100 years, FDA approved a drug for heart failure for exactly that. A secondary
CNS. So most of the CNS drugs, Junaid, goes through that path. Very
correct, and which was CNS we are okay with, but heart-wise, why would you do that? This is amazing that we are saying these secondary endpoints so important now. And then another thing, right, as far as the validation as you were talking about, another big issue is that we have really moved the science too forward, right? Alzheimer's is a big issue. It's been $50 billion have been spent in the last year. The one medication that came out has been properly, have an issue. How are we going to really move this forward? The only way to move this forward is to get baseline data of the patient, early detection, so you can do early intervention. So for neurology, it is absolute must as far as that is concerned. And then last one that you also mentioned is the risk factor. And that's what Germany has been doing a beautiful work, is Germany has basically, done the category 1, which is observation, now going to category 2. And they have a whole pathway that has been designed for the next 5 years, in which they're going to implement these different technologies on a step-by-step fashion. So it doesn't look like, Junaid is coming in and saying, let's do this. And it's not a YouTube channel that you're creating, it's actually medicine. So they actually have a way, proper design way of managing risk in digital clinical trials and digital health technologies. So that if anyone's interested, definitely look at the Germany's model as far as this is concerned.
I do have
recently. Sorry.
Please go ahead, Mr.
No, and I think so. You may have heard about the FDA recently approving a video game on prescription, right, for ADHD, right? And so there is, there's a whole new stratum of digiceuticals that are opening up, right? Non-pharmacological interventions that may be beneficial. I think that the big question now, and again, this was something that Lilly are very focused on, I know other big pharma companies are, is really defining what those validated digital biomarkers will look like moving forward. To both of your points, the Holy Grail will be to have the primary objective as using a surrogate, right, or a digital biomarker. Now, we're not there yet, even with just biomarkers in general, right? So digital is the next step. The closest we may be is with companion apps or, in the same way you have a companion diagnostic in oncology, companion apps for respiratory and making sure that, your inhaler is being used properly and smart inhalers and all of those things. But, we want to get to the next stage. And again, I think if we're thinking about Pakistan specifically and the opportunities that are there, I think, certainly from my perspective, one is to create an environment that attracts others to come to Pakistan, because it's an environment where pragmatism and innovation is encouraged, right? From a regulatory perspective, the whole environment is such that you encourage that, and those companies then that want to develop drugs in that way come to those regions. They specifically look for them. So you have an opportunity with that. I think there's an opportunity, again, as Dr. Junaid alluded to, with defining the studies, is from an academic perspective, the barrier is low to entry now, right, to use some of these digital technologies. So actually, with the intellectual capacity that exists in Pakistan in the medical community, to start running some of these academic studies and gaining, some of these answers quickly, and, again, creating an environment where it feels attractive to the global companies to come to. And the final thing was more a question for those that are involved in that. Digital technology and telehealth, for example, has existed for a few years now, but penetration in Pakistan has been low. What's the reason for that? What are the barriers? Is it individuals, or is there something else that's causing a low uptake? That's just a general question. I don't know what the answer is.
Actually, I don't know the numbers, to be honest with you, as far as adoption is concerned in Pakistan specifically for telehealth. But the question really is that anecdotally, of course, there was a lot of buzz in the last 2 years, which everywhere was. Again, you're talking about pendulum swinging and everything, but I still believe that this model, with there's 18 different companies now in Pakistan, there's been massive investment going on. There are, constantly growing numbers of people being seen. But, there is, again, as I told you, in Pakistan, the level of trust is already a slightly low. And the more important thing is that digital literacy is still a big factor in terms of, so the minute this generation of 10 years goes on, it's going to be the same thing. Nobody's going to have a bank account and a physical bank. I mean, you go to a physical bank when you have some big stuff to do, but otherwise everything is going to be digital.
Yeah, we are getting very close to the finish line. I do have Dr. Samia Taslim, who has a group of researchers all in clinical microbiology. Would love to be in touch with you. Anybody has a last question, please raise the hand. I mean, you can click at the bottom of the screen, raise hand, and we will give you the mic, and you can comment or share.
I just have a comment for Junaid. I'm obviously very much into this field, but the way he summarized, I am kind of proud of Merit and Junaid. I really you made it very simple.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah. If there is no question, we have 9:58. I will ask Danish to do some close-up remarks. Danish, not on the seminars, not on the educational workshops, more on the entrepreneurs. So just a request. So please to you, Danish. Is he online? I know he was there.
I think he was there earlier, but I don't see him now.
Okay. Dr. Rao, why don't you close the session then?
I think when we started this many years ago, we were more into doing online lectures in Pakistan, hiring faculty from here, not hiring, but asking and do deliver. So we did hundreds of lectures. And then Danish came in and he basically turned into more objective teaching or modules. And then most recently, over like a year and a half, so we are been looking into anybody who's in healthcare technology in Pakistan or outside Pakistan, but want to work in Pakistan. We are focusing on that. And related to that, we have a group of people who are, most of these panels are involved in that. If anybody is interested to get in touch, so obviously throw an email to APPNA MERIT or Danish. But mostly we're looking into anybody who's trying to do anything in healthcare technology, healthcare and technology in Pakistan, or is living outside Pakistan but interested in Pakistan, please contact us.
Thank you very much. We are right in time. It's at 10 a.m. on Pacific Daytime. Wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Junaid. Thanks, Dr. Musaddiq. And thank you very much, overall. And thank you, everyone who dialed in. Thank you very much for your precious time. And see you next time. Thank you. All the best.